Caught wife cheated on me. I fell in love with my stepsister. Story 1. I, 32 male, am in love with my former sister-in-law, 27 female. I'm now at the point where I can't take it any longer. I've been in love with this lady for a long time, maybe a couple of years, and I'm not sure if I should end it or try to create anything with her. I met my ex-sister wives when I was 23 years old, and the connection grew swiftly, and by 26 I had a son and a daughter and had married. However, my ex-wife had an affair within months of our marriage, and to make matters worse, the guy she strayed with had gotten her addicted to heroin. After I confronted her about it, she stated she was going to seek treatment, but she instead fled in the middle of the night. I haven't heard from her in 4 years, and the last I heard, she is still with that man and homeless in Las Vegas. I'm not sure how accurate that is, but with my emphasis on keeping it together for the kids, I don't have the time or desire to track her down after what she did. In the end, I got a divorce in my absence. After the incident, though, I had a really nice connection with my in-laws. Every other weekend, my kids stay with their grandparents on that side, and they still treat me like a son. I still attend to Christmas parties and well liked by the family. Nobody speaks about my ex anymore, mostly to avoid worrying my children. My eldest, my son, is deeply affected by his mother's departure. He's now 9, and I had to get him counseling when he told me he wished his mother was dead. She had been verbally abusive at the end, when he was around 5 or 6 years old. Anyway, in the year after my ex's departure, her sister and her boyfriend began visiting the kids often. They knew I worked a lot and would babysit as practice since they wanted to have their own children. My kids adore them and have been spoiled by them, which I didn't mind since we could all need a little cheer. They married and were madly in love. Her spouse, on the other hand, was killed in a job accident soon after the birth of their daughter. As one can expect, it has been tremendously difficult and unpleasant for everyone concerned. I followed my sister's lead and started taking her kid to give her time to herself when things were too much to handle or she needed alone time. She's been in bereavement counseling for a few years, but she still wears her ring and says she can't picture ever dating again. I speak to her about him a lot, and she's come a long way, but she's still madly in love with him. I can't comprehend the suffering she's going through. We've been a more consistent presence in each other's life over the previous 2 years. My kids adore their aunt, and I invite her over for supper at least twice a week. My daughter and her daughter have become close and like spending time together, so they have sleepovers. I've moved on from my ex, but the thought of dating someone as hazardous as their mother has kept me out of the dating world. I'm not sure when it occurred, but I gradually started to soften toward my Sil. She's a wonderful mother in light of what's happened to her. She's one of the nicest individuals I know, and her sense of humor constantly makes me smile and laugh. Then I realized I was physically drawn to her. I've always felt a little terrible about it since her late husband was a dear friend and she's clearly still in mourning, so I've kept it to myself. We've spent more time together since COVID began, since social alienation has caused us to lose touch with most other people. Nothing romantic has ever been addressed and I try not to flirt, but last week after the kids went to bed, I prepared us a few drinks, not enough to be drunk on, but she said she'd rather stay the night, so I took her sofa. This morning, I woke up to breakfast, and the 4 of us felt like the kind of family I've always wanted. She even kissed my forehead, something she doesn't usually do. I still didn't say anything, but when she went, I discovered my kid in his room, calmly playing with his toys. I asked him if he was okay since he seemed upset. He tells me plainly, as only a child can, that he desires. Sil was his mother's name. I sat down with him and asked him why he felt that way, and he told me a long list of reasons, including her being polite to him and the fact that she never screams at him. He enjoys visiting her at his grandparents' house, and she enjoys drawing drawings with him, something I had no idea they did. By the end, my heart, which was already fluttering for this lady, had become much more tense. When I sent them off with their grandparents on a visit, I attempted to broach the matter with her parents to get a sense of how people might react. I made a joke about her and I behaving like a married couple at times, and they didn't laugh. They were sort of standoffish, nice, but either they know something or they don't approve. It's becoming too difficult for me to ignore or pretend it's not bothering me. I'm madly in love with her. Either I have to kill it and stop thinking about her, or I have to find a method to get past this position and tell her everything. If anybody out there has any advice on how to approach a widow, particularly one who was married to a buddy, with this kind of aim, I'd be grateful. Oh my god, this actually blew out. First, thank you for all of the amazing prizes. I'd react to your posts, but they close mine, which irritates me since I want to respond to as many people as possible. Thank you for all of your love and support. I'm in love with an angel and will keep you updated. Anyway, does anybody know of a subreddit where I could post this that won't get locked? I'm sorry that folks took the time to leave me messages and that I can't respond or communicate with them. When I checked this, I was like, holy hell, I need to get supper and the kids to bed. But if anybody could recommend a site to publish updates in the future where things aren't so stringent, I'd be grateful. First and foremost, I'd want to thank everyone who provided me advice on how to continue, as well as thoughts and things I may possibly say to my ex Sil. That's what I ended up doing. Shortly after I made the first post, I realized that my children were spending Sunday night at their grandparents' home and that they usually invite my niece, Sil's daughter, to join them. I permit these bi-weekly visits because I believe it is critical for them to establish a positive connection with their mother's parents. Sil, on the other hand, lets her kid go since she adores playing with my daughter. So I figured we'd both have a free night. Normally, I'd play a game or go to the gym an additional night, but I felt it would be the ideal time to Sil without the kids around. So I texted her, "Hey, kids are out this Sunday, was thinking you may like to have supper." It was a reasonably fancy restaurant that reopened for outside dining about 2 months ago. I never invite her out to dinner, and we're nearly never alone together unless there's a kid in the next room. She replies she'd love to, and my worry begins to set in since now I have to act on my emotions. When I inquire whether she'd rather meet at my house and take one vehicle or meet at the restaurant, she replies she'll come by my house first. I'm a little cleaner than usual, dressed up but not overdressed. She arrives, and my God, she's wearing a really gorgeous evening gown with makeup, not something she normally wears. "You look really gorgeous." I had to have been slack-jawed for a second, haha. We make small conversation and congratulate one another on how we look, but I still don't have the courage to bring up the subject, and she isn't pressing it. Dinner was fantastic, and they had a live jazz-type ensemble performing. I will definitely return to this location. She says this is the first time she's truly had an adult social event that didn't include her kid in a few years, and I say it's about the same for me. We're laughing, joking, conversing, and casually caressing each other here and there. I can't seem to find my nerve, and I'm frightened of sabotaging this moment, so I simply settle for having fun. But as we're walking away, my mind and I'm like, it. And as we rise to return to the vehicle, I offer her my arm, and we stroll back to the car arm in arm, no awkwardness, no one noting it. I open her door and want to drive her back to her vehicle. She comes to a halt as I open the door. She urges me to stop and that she wants to kiss me, despite her apprehensive demeanor. There was no alcohol during dinner, therefore this is all her fault. So I drew her close and kissed her. I can't really put into words how fantastic it felt to finally touch her. Well, the kissing has been going on outside this restaurant for at least a half hour, with her leaning against my vehicle. When we eventually take a break, we exchange a few more romantic glances before getting in the vehicle and driving back to my house. I've never been happier than when she's holding my hand when I'm driving. I admit to her that I've had emotions for her for a long time, but I didn't want to frighten her away because of the horrific things we went through. She tells me she's been carrying a flame for nearly 6 months. I had gone on a few Tinder dates at the time, and since we were just friends, I detailed what a shambles those encounters were. She tells me that she became incredibly envious and irritated that I was seeing these females, and that it was about that time that she realized she had formed emotions for me. As it turned out, I didn't contact her because of her late husband, and she didn't approach me because she was scared I'd see too much of her sister, my ex-wife, in her and hate her for it. After we came home, I let her in, and we chose to resist the need to get right into bed and instead sat on the sofa hugging and chatting about what we needed to do to make this a functional relationship. There were a few tearful moments there. We discussed a bit about her late spouse and where she is in the grieving process, and I told her that I don't want to hurry her and that if she needs time, I'll wait as long as she needs me to. She says she feels like she's at a position where she can love again, that she's gone beyond feeling guilty for having emotions for me, which was a problem for her. She then brought up her sister as well as the obvious issues raised in the comments section. What would we do if X ever showed up around here again or tried to re-enter my children's lives? What if she returns transformed and apologetic? Would I accept her back? I told Sil that it was a no-brainer, that I'd forgiven her for cheating on me, but I'd never forgive her for what she did to my baby. Before his mother began cheating, using, and lashing out at him, he was a sunshiny and joyful youngster. He's doing better today, but his demeanor and negativity for someone so young bothered me for a long time. Sil was worried about how he would respond to her since, unlike our girls, he is mature enough to grasp everything. I urged her not to tell him since it would embarrass him, but he recently told me that he wanted his aunt was his mother instead. We claimed we were going to take it easy and not rush things, but the kissing resumed, and because we were in private this time, we gave up fighting to keep out of the bedroom. I'd had dreams of petting her face in the morning throughout the entirety of my affections for her, and this was one of them that I eventually got to play out. Moving ahead, we will develop date evenings and seek to strengthen our already solid foundation. When we finally inform our friends and family that we're a relationship, we're going to do it jointly. But that's where I'm at right now. That concludes my update. If this subreddit permits it, I could make another to discuss how the parents, in-laws, and children react to the news. After 2 years of hoping she was mine, she is now. This can't go wrong. Story 2. My wife is mad I caught her cheating and demand an NDA regarding her affair in exchange for more than 50% of my assets. My wife and I began dating in 2000 and married in October of 2005. In 2010, our son was born. 13-year partnership, 8-year marriage, and 3.5-year-old kid. We both have a large family in the area and strong support networks for babysitting. Divorce would necessitate the selling of our home as well as the relocation of her parents that rent a second house from us. I would keep that home, but my wife would sell the one we now reside in. These topics were addressed and, on a broad scale, agreed upon a few weeks ago. I thought for about a year that my wife was having an emotional affair with one of her co-workers. I asked her about it several times, every few days near the end, and even asked if she had sex with him. Everything was denied. She said he was a buddy, even showing me images of him and his family, telling me where he worked, same industry, different company, and filling me in on some of their talks. She was having so much fun with it that I began calling this person her boyfriend. We had supper with her folks on November 17th, and he was brought up in the most casual of ways. My wife paused for about 5 seconds, longer than usual in her reply to her parents, and I knew something was wrong. I grabbed our family laptop the following morning and looked through her iPhone backups for proof. She had been sexting with him since early September and had a full-fledged sexual affair with him since early October. When I challenged her about it, she came clean, confessing to everything, including a one-night encounter with a man during a business conference in February 2013. In a summary, there was a one-night stand in February 2013, sexting in September 2013, and a dozen or more sexual meetings in October/November 2013. The last tidbit was a 3-day honeymoon, his words, at a business conference in October. They had particular intentions to continue this until February 2014 when they would meet at the same conference where they had met a year earlier. They had both agreed in writing before I found them that it would stop there. I had my wife obtain STD testing and she will return in 6 months. During the affair, she and I were sleeping together and have continued to do so since. The other man is 42 years old, a pretty successful partner at a small law firm, married with 3 children, and lives in the same town as us. I have already run across him while shopping. Point is, we live close together and will sometimes run into one other. His wife, 42, who does not work, is unaware of the affair. My wife appeared to imply that if his wife found out, she would certainly go nuts and take him to the cleaners. My wife and I are in treatment, both couples and individual, and are still deciding whether or not to remain together. She's 50/50 at this point, and I'm 25/75 or 75/25 depending on the day. We are quite respectful to one another, and I feel we still have mutual affection for each other. As one would expect, there is a tremendous lot of anguish, distrust, tension, bitterness, and a slew of other feelings. I believe the relationship can be saved if we are both prepared to put in a lot of effort. One difficulty is that I'm not sure either of us can tolerate the procedure for months or years. We've spoken about some of the reasons she did what she did, as well as some shared flaws in our relationship. We're working on them, and I anticipate that it will take a long time. In the meanwhile, I'm dealing with the following issues. I feel compelled to inform his wife. I believe it would be ethically correct and I would feel some feeling of accomplishment in righting that injustice. Consider that my method of retaliating against him. The trouble is that doing so may have ramifications for both his and my wife's careers. As a result, it might have a negative impact on me. I'm 99.9% certain I can't tell the wife, but I can't help but think about methods to inform her while retaining plausible deniability. If my wife and I divorce, I'm so angry right now that I'm 99.9% sure I'm outing him to his wife. Note aforementioned cleaner's comment. Trust. I'm certain my wife is no longer sleeping or interacting with this man. I have enough of evidence that she is on the up and up. Not to add that I still have backups of my iPhone, complete with mutually photos and texts. If I caught them doing anything else, it would be game over. If I go public, he has a lot to lose. Having said that, my wife did sneak around with impunity for a few months, so I have some fundamental questions about who the duck is this person I'm married to. Basically, I presume anything she says is a lie unless I can independently verify it. How other individuals regain their trust. This is my kid. He's just 3.5 years old, so he won't remember anything about mommy and daddy as a marriage if she and I divorce now. That will not be the case after a year. He's now ignorant to our problems since, for the most part, we've maintained calm while he's in the home, but I'm sure he can feel the tension between us. I'm quite sure both she and I are more short with him. Is there anybody else in the group who has been in a similar scenario with children of a comparable age? How did you manage the situation and how did it work out for your children? Who should I confide in? Her parents, sister, and a close friend have all been informed. I told the same thing as well as a few out-of-town acquaintances. In a nutshell, we've kept this mostly secret from our local friends, co-workers, and so forth. Of course, a part of me wants to stand on a figurative hilltop and tell everyone. However, even if we do get through this, I'm not sure I want that ghost to follow us about in public for the rest of our lives. Finally, do you have any additional suggestions, questions, or comments? I'm sure I left something out. This forum has suddenly become my primary public outlet. Okay, everyone, just a little update. I'm on my phone in bed. The wife is in the guest room. You may probably tell from that sentence that I have the steely reserve of a child. She had gone out for drinks with a committee on which she serves. Mutual friend is not on it. I must have been behaving strangely. I'm generally humorous and lighthearted with her, but I think I was rather stoic. So when we arrived to the restaurant, she began lecturing me about my envy. I can show you the agenda for the meeting if you don't believe me, etc. In the preceding 26 days, I had questioned her about MF, mutual friend, appropriate initials. So I broke down at the restaurant and told her everything I knew. I held my calm as best I could and ate and drank margaritas while she didn't eat at all. It was a terrible idea to open a restaurant. I returned home. I requested a full account of what had occurred. A long tale short, started with footsie. In March, she texted to say it was inappropriate and apologized. He doubled down and escalated the flirtation. She responded. By July/August, pictures began to be exchanged. Only 6 or so inappropriate ones from her, dozens from him. During this time, they met frequently for coffee during the workday and would text each other every day. They kissed during her unremembered blackout at the BBQ. She asked him if they did because she felt back to daily messaging. Last week, she was in DC for the night and received the final nude photo from him. Today, she was texting him on her way to a committee meeting. She spends the whole time telling him how sexy he is and how if things were different, they might be together. It took a trickle of truth to find out about the second kiss, and that was after I informed her that if any little element of this tale doesn't make up or is later shown to be false, we're done. Her first response to me notifying his wife was that it was none of our concern. I told her I'd probably tell her anyhow, and that she shouldn't tell MF about it. Another significant fact is that she erased her iCloud backups a week after I challenged her against the advice of Apple support. To be fair, her phone was experiencing serious problems, which were resolved by erasing the backup, but it was still quite useful. There have been fresh backups after the deletion, and I'd want to have access to them. She is now saying no, but if there is to be any reconciliation, this is a sticking issue for me. I told her I was going insane in my head over what had happened, and that this would at least solidify my understanding of what had happened over the previous month. I spent the previous month trying hard to become a better spouse and partner for her, and she was still sexting MF, and the pace of his nude selfies was even starting to ramp up at the end. This is where we are right now. I'll focus on determining my next steps. I'll keep you posted if anything new comes to light or if any progress is achieved. I promise I was a wonderful spouse, undevastated. My D-Day occurred 1 year ago tomorrow morning. Oh my goodness, the time has flown by. It's been an emotional roller coaster of discovering, planning, explaining, and contemplating. By December of last year, I realized we weren't going to make it. She was taking no responsibility, no treatment, few apologies, and was completely self-absorbed. It took me months to get the courage to make certain adjustments. My STBX was still hesitant to do anything by April, and it was evident that I was not, and would never be, a priority in her life. She is a wonderful lady who has gone off the deep end, at least with regards to our marriage. I divorced her in May and moved out in August. We've stayed friends and things are better than they've been in a few years. On dating, she's dating, and we're doing a good job of co-parenting. We went to mediation, finished MSA over the summer, and divorced. Paperwork was filed with the courts. I haven't forgiven her, and I know what she did was bad, but it's all made me a better person. She's still a hot mess in many respects, but at least she's her own hot mess. Everything is going well for me now that I'm on my own.